Welcome to Mystical Dispute, the limited Magic the Gathering debate podcast. I'm Garrett Gardner, aka G-Guards.
And I'm Carl Chase, aka 2Duck Cubed.
Check out our monthly bonus mini episodes on patreon.com/Mystical Dispute. And thank you so much to our patrons. And today, we are going to debate Chupacabra Echo versus
Captain Storm Cosmium Raider.
And Captain Storm is blue and red for a 2/2 human pirate. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target pirate you control. And Chupacabra Echo is 2 black for a 3/2 beast horror spirit. When it enters the battlefield, target creature and opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Carl, we've been on a bit of a hiatus. To be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of this format, but I'm not really interested in complaining about it right now. I want to talk about it. And we've got a really juicy uncommon versus uncommon debate to tackle today.
I am interested in complaining about it. However, I don't think that makes for great content, so I will spare you all my discussion on just how much I hate this format, which is a lot. But
look, I'm very passionate about this debate, and I think I'm going to actually wipe the floor with you, Carl.
I am also passionate about this debate, and it's one of the ways that I have found success in this format. And, you know, I mean, we do this all the time, Garrett, right?
Yep.
Our recurring fans pretty much know what side we're going to argue when 2 cards come up. We've got the gold card that it's super fast. It creates highly linear strategies, glass cannons. And then we have
Chupacabra Echo, which is a 2-for-1 creature, 4 mana for a 3/2 that just kills anything on the battlefield. And there's a lot of grave digging in this set, so obviously it's going to be more than a 2-for-1. It'll be a 3-for-1 or 4-for-1, right?
Yeah.
So Carl, without any further ado, let's just jump into
In this corner,
Opening takes.
Carl, my take is that Captain Storm absolutely wipes the floor with Chupacabra Echo. All you want to do in this format is be red-blue artifacts, make your 2-mana 2/2, by the way, a huge giant threat, or make your 1-mana 2/2 haste into a giant threat. It's not even a contest for me. Echo is not even on the radar if I'm comparing these 2 cards.
And Garrett, Chupacabra Echo is clearly where I want to be right now. All these players just playing these 1-mana 1/1s, and Chupacabra Echo just comes in and wipes the floor with those strategies, putting a creature on the battlefield, taking away the tempo, and then you can clean up with good, strong, solid threats and removal afterwards.
Well, Carl, let's do your favorite thing and consult the numbers in
Data crunch.
Well, Carl, this episode's done already because I've got a 0.4% game in hand win rate over you, 59.9% for Captain Storm over the 59.5% Echo. As you know, that's the end of the episode. That's all we ever talk about. We don't talk about any nuance or whatever. Game in hand win rate is the only stat that you ever have to look at when you are comparing card power level.
And we have never made this joke before.
Hey man, it's an oldie, but it's a goodie, right?
It is. It is good.
No matter how many times
I didn't say it was bad or that we were going to stop making the joke, but I am giving us crap for making it every time.
And we can shout it to the abyss as much as we want. People don't seem to listen. Like, game in hand win rate is just the de facto done conversation. Don't do that. There's a lot more to it. But, you know, usually I'm the one arguing, the one with the lower game in hand win rate. So just give me this one.
I'm uncomfortable right now, Garrett. I'm starting to understand what it's like to be you. Always arguing the boring card. The one that I'm pretty sure that less people are going to be on the side of, okay, it's a creature and it kills stuff and you can maybe do it again if you grave dig it, and I don't know. In defense of the stats for Chupacabra Echo, it is more important to the decks that it is in, I would argue, than even Captain Storm, the signpost on common, is to those decks, as the improvement when drawn for Chupacabra Echo is 7.1 points. The decks that it is in don't win nearly as often. The game played win rate is a full 2.3 points lower than it is for Captain Storm Cosmium Raider. The game games not seen win rate is 4 points lower. So if you have both of them in a deck and you don't draw either of them, the Captain Storm deck is like way better typically than the Chupacabra Echo deck. I do think some of that is a faction of if you are in the open lane for blue-red, which is arguably the best deck in the format, and if not the best deck in the format, it's probably going to be pretty good. And if you end up in black, a lot of times that's not your first plan and you're scrapping something together. So
or you went all in on an early Echo, right? That's the best card in your deck, so you really need to draw it to get it to go.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You're right. You went all in an early Echo, and then you end up with some really, really mediocre black commons like Vito's Inquisitor and Acolyte of Saddle Dots something, and Deep Goblin Skull Taker, the 3-mana 2/2.
Yeah, there's a lot that can go wrong in black, and there's not a lot that can go right in blue-red, and that's going to be, spoiler alert, a little bit of my argument. But one last thing I wanted to point out in the stats page is that Captain Storm has a 4.12 ALSA, whereas Echo has a 2.55, meaning Echo is taken almost 2 picks sooner than Captain Storm, one of the top cards to take in the pack, which makes sense. Captain Storm is gold, so you can only really play it in blue-red, and it's also, much better to play early than late, but still, the power is strong with the Storm, so I'm still on it despite that.
I would love to see first pack ALSA for some of these cards because
that's an interesting point. Yeah,
let's say that the person that's going to get the captain is sitting 8th in the draft and they're the only blue-red drafter. It's very possible that it wheels all the way to that individual in pack 3. Whereas if you get a 5th pick captain in pack 1, you're switching. Very likely you're just like, oh, that is a signal if I've ever seen one, and you're going to switch into blue-red.
Well, Carl, we're getting a little too dangerously close to debating it, so let's debate it in our favorite section where we debate things called
Debate It.
And Carl, I guess I'll start things off by debating it. I am usually not higher on gold uncommons than I am on single color uncommons because I really very much like to draft the hard way, which means trying to navigate my way through the pack, see what's open, see what's not. But there's just so much support for pirates and artifacts in this format that it's not even a second thought to me anymore. Now, in the beginning of the format, I was taking Echo no problem over the captain, but at this point, it just feels like all you need is for there to be blue and or red commons in the pack, and you will get support for captain, because not only are there a ton of free artifacts, there's treasure makers, there's diamond pickaxe that could just make treasures every turn. If you've ever faced that, it's just a disaster. But there's also, one of the better commons in the set, Oaken Siren, is both a pirate and an artifact which has flying and vigilance. It's just the best thing in the world that you could possibly throw down when you've got the captain out. And that's the whole point of the card, is like it's a value engine that's actually on a body, but you can throw those counters basically anywhere. Like the Goblin Tome Raider is a goblin pirate, and that's, you need artifacts in order to turn that into a 2/2, and you always have them. And then honestly, my personal favorite, although not the most powerful support card for this, is Plundering Pirate, the 3-mana 3/2 that just makes a treasure, but that's a pirate too. So now you've got a 3-mana 4/3 probably with added value. So just all in all I want to do in this format is go hard on what's working the best, and it's open enough. And I guess the biggest argument I'm making is it doesn't even need to be wide open or even a little open. You're just going to get the support enough to make captain insane in your deck if you take it early and then you just draft the commons in those two colors.
Garrett, on one hand, I don't really disagree with much that you said. And you say, wow, that makes for a really interesting debate there, Carl. On the other hand, I have tried to do many of the same things in this format without a lot of personal success. And for better or worse, what I have found is that when I was pushing pretty hard to get blue and red cards, and this is what I did. Like early on in the format, I tried drafting blue-red with preference, right? It wasn't that I was only taking blue-red or white-red to some extent, but I was really keying in on it. And all right, this is the best deck, so let's try to make it work. And what I was finding is that even when I was getting pretty solid, strong blue-red decks, is that I was getting up against other strong blue-red or white-red decks.
Yep.
And those games, when I was on the play, I was winning a good amount. And those games when I was in the draw, I was getting my brain absolutely bashed in.
Yep.
And for better or worse, I could not find the formula. I couldn't find the mirror breaker. I couldn't find the makeup of the blue-red deck that was just gaining, significant advantage in the mirror. For example, I tried more of the 2-mana 3/3 to just go maybe a little bit slower. And hey, that's a really efficient body for the mirror, and so that seems good. It didn't work because my opponents were just able to make 4/4s or make flyers that went over it, and I didn't have enough to win the massive amount of the games in the play anymore that it was working out. And this is probably personal fault. I'm sure there's people that have figured this out, but I started trying a different path. In the classic kind of rock, paper, scissors of Magic, of tempo, I would say is defined as such. The slowest decks tend to be beaten by the fastest decks. The fastest decks tend to be beaten by slightly slower decks. And, that's kind of mid-range is beating aggro. And then those decks tend to be beaten by the really slow control decks. That's your rock, paper, scissors, right? And so I think my initial mistake was trying to go full on control mode. And I realized oh no, almost all of the best decks you're playing are pure aggro. So just be a little slower. And surprisingly, that has finally started to work a little bit for me. And I've had my first success in the format in the last 15 to 20 drafts or so after just getting hammered for a while. And Chupacabra Echo has been by an absolute mile the best uncommon for me in that strategy. Yes, you've got cards like Zoetic Glyph that are higher in power level, but I'm not finding myself in blue very often in these decks. It's either base green or base black most often, and those are the colors that are the most open right now because people are going after blue, red, and white in Premier Draft.
It's funny, Carl, because at the very beginning of this format, obviously I saw Chupacabra Echo, and I was like, well, that's my baby. That's what I want to do in this format. And I drafted it a bunch, and I had, decent success, but then I just started getting my teeth caved in, and I decided the old saying is if you can't beat them, join them, and that's sort of why I'm on Captain Storm. I gotta be honest, I don't really want to be on Captain Storm. I don't want to be forcing things, but it does feel like a necessary evil for me winning at this point because inevitably you will end up in the pod where you first pick an Echo and then you're just battling with one or two other players for black, and it's just a disaster. There's just not black commons that can help you salvage that, and so now you've got this really awesome card with Echo but not enough to support it. And so I'm just terrified of that, and I just think it's safer to go in on the best color pair with the best uncommon. And it's usually I do like to counter the meta, so I've got a lot of respect for what you're doing, but it's just not what I'm doing at the moment because it just feels like, who cares if there's 3 other red or blue drafters at the table? I am still going to get what I need. And you say the play and draw matters a lot. That is this format, right? I think that's the big takeaway. It's the biggest divide in 17 lands history between play and draw. And so I guess I would argue that if the format is a coin flip, you can't really rig the coin flip. You just have to roll with it, right? And so
you absolutely cannot rig the coin flip.
And so you know what? You're going to be on the play exactly 50% of the time over an infinity number of games, unless you're Carl and you keep track of it and you go on these ridiculous long streaks and you let Garrett know about it.
I know it's great content to constantly look at my play draw. But you know what, Garrett? I've been on the draw 160 times on the play, 117 times in this format, and it's killing me. It's a 0.27% outcome, and I know that is the most interesting thing everybody wants to hear about. Yeah, I got it. But you know what? It really sucks when you can't ever get on the freaking play in best of one, okay? Sorry. Okay, I just need to get that out. I'm better now.
But I mean, I feel like that's a reality.
You can cut that, except you won't.
No, I won't. No, that's staying in. And you just have to lean into it. It's just you have to accept the truth that is this format.
I know.
And I think you will be able to get use out of the Echo, but I feel like over time, Infinity drafts, you're just going to be more powerful with the Captain Lannery, especially if you have solid tight play along with it. It's not just an auto win. And I have a slight example. It might be somewhat obvious, but one of the plays that I have blown people out with is you want to play Brackish Blunder, the 2-mana bounce spell that makes a map token in the Lannery decks, right?
Yeah.
But that makes a map token at instant speed, and so you can grow something at instant speed. And so knowing that combat, you can attack with things and even plan to bounce one of your own guys to pump Lannery or pump something for exact lethal or whatever it is you need to do, that's won me 2 games that I should have lost so far. And like, that's the sort of thing that you can get rewarded with, even if, even if it is like coin flip magic where you both have really, really powerful blue red decks in the mirror, like you can get the edge by finding really good combat scenarios and navigating who's on the beatdown better. And so I guess I'm kind of arguing that it's not a coin flip in that case, but
It is really funny, Garrett, that obviously the whole joke behind the episode is everybody believes that you were going to argue for the Chupacabra Echo and I was going to argue for the captain, of course. And I think quite literally that is where we would have been 2 weeks ago.
Yep. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And we've both done a full flip-flop there.
Flip-flop.
and not even intentionally. Like, I mean, this is not done for content. This is actually the way we are both playing right now. And we'll see. I think we are all always biased by short-term results. As much as we don't want to be.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't win with blue-red, and then I did win with green and black. And so right now, that's what I'm doing. And, vice versa. But, like, the results really aren't that close for me. And the feel of the games has been, I have felt agency for the first time in this format that I had not previously felt. I felt like so many of my games were coming down to what card got discovered off of the top, or if my opponent draws an artifact, they win, otherwise I win. Whatever it was a lot of like really close marginal games like that. And yes, of course you can use play skill in that one, but either I had made mistakes or it's just not the way that those games came down. And I feel the agency again.
And that matters. It matters to feel like you have agency, that you have. I mean, you're going to play better if you're having more fun too.
You do, and that's relevant too. And I'd like to say that is not the case. Like, hey, I'm going to play as good if I'm having the most fun or not. But like, I play better when I'm having more fun. I know I do. You're less likely to have your mind elsewhere. You're more into trying to figure out every interaction in the moment. Whatever it is, it's just the way that it goes. One of my favorite features, if you're a Patreon at 17 lands, you get your own card stats. And I've gone into my own card stats and I've sorted them by total number of games played with the card and just looked for the top win rate cards. And I'm going to read you a few of those cards that I have had success with. So the only card that is like obvious in here is Waterwind Scout, which is one of my top played cards, and I've got a very, very good game in hand win rate with. That card is also incredible.
Yes.
To go to the next 70% win rate card is Cavern Stomper. The next one is River Herald Guide. Interestingly enough, that's actually my highest rated common of the high volume cards.
That's the 6 mana 7/7 and the 3 mana 3/1 Explorer, right? In green.
Yep. And then there's really only 2 more high volume cards over 70%, and that's Chupacabra Echo, Glimpse the Core.
The green uncommon ramp spell, you can get a forest or a cave from your graveyard and put into play tapped.
Which has a pretty low win rate overall, but when you're basically just trying to curve out and play 4-drops, it plays out pretty darn well. So again, and that is very indicative of where I've been at, just trying to slow the game down. And like you said, Garrett, and this is like honestly maybe even an argument you made for a different similar card in a different episode, but that first Chupacabra Echo goes a long way. You almost always seal the game when you block with it and trade and then get it back and play it for a second time.
Yep.
The game is almost always over at that point, unless there is for some reason something that you are unable to kill with a Chupacabra Echo, which sometimes can happen. Yes, sometimes you're sitting with it at like 1, but most of the time, if you've built your deck appropriately, you're going to be able to find a way to get it big enough to kill the relevant threats.
I've got one last argument in favor of Captain Storm, but I'm going to start by pointing out that I think both cards probably have a deflated win rate because I think they're both cards that are prone to being misplayed by the average user. So I'll start with Echo, which is like sometimes you need to just play it as a 3/2. Obviously, that's just going to be how it plays out in some games, very rarely. But then also you can attack with your 2/2 into their 4/4 and just finish it off. And don't forget that the 2/2 will die and add to your descend, and you can kill things with it. Also, in general, like you want to put as much stuff that buys things back from your graveyard as possible because like those things like Another Chance also mill you your Chupacabra, and you can maybe get that back. So that's one way. And I think that that's fairly significant. But Captain Storm, on the other hand, I think is probably misplayed even harder because a lot of the times these creature engines, people don't want to risk them in combat. I see this a lot that the game in hand win rate is deflated for that sort of thing. You just want to attack with it. Like sometimes you make Captain Lannery herself into a 5/5 and you just bash. Other times you make a Goblin Tome Raider into a 5/5 and then you attack into their 2/2 with your 5/5 and your Captain Lannery and you trade it. And it's like, you know what? Maybe you even have an artifact in your hand, but now they've just taken 5 damage and they have no answer to your 5/5.
That is such a good point.
Sometimes you have to just jump with Captain Lannery to win like a race. It happens all the time. And also it's a sort of card that can have an explosive start. It gives like 4 counters and then you're just hoping to draw one or you just have one more artifact. And it's not really worth +1/+1 counter to miss an entire attack where you could just trade your 2/2 Lannery with a 3/2 or whatever is on their board or a removal spell or anything like that. And I just think that like when it comes down to the stats, Lannery is going to suffer a little bit more than Echo.
Garrett, I think that is a fantastic point. I'm not saying we do this, but if we made a list of the most common mistakes by strong players that maybe have not crossed over to elite players, for example, and not using their creatures as actual creatures when they do something else flashy. That is the most common mistake.
Yep. I mean, I don't even know. Like, a lot of the time I'll look at the board, I'm like, I don't know. Should I trade it here? Like, I've got 2 artifacts in hand. But, like, you got to think 3 turns ahead. Like, can they really deal with this other creature that I grew a lot, you know? Sometimes you could even have, like, the Diamond Pickaxe in play, making counters every turn, and I still think it's correct to attack with Lannery just to finish the game out.
If you ever watch Kyle Rose, the Hams stream, he's one of the best limited players in the world. In my opinion, one of the things he's best at is knowing when to treat even some of the top rares as meat suits. Sometimes you're going to trade their 2/2 for your 2/2, except your 2/2 has a ton of text, and he's fine with that because that's the correct thing to do within the flow of the game. And I think looking past sometimes some of the stats to just figure out the right way to attack and block in a way that's going to lead to victory is something that I think sets him apart from some strong but not elite players.
It's hard, and it's definitely a skill to read the board and the possibilities in the next few turns enough to know when to throw away your engine just for 2 more damage or whatever it is you need to do. But creatures like Storm, who are already aggressively statted at 2 mana 2/2, Carl, that's more than you could ever ask for, right?
It is. Those decks that Captain is in are winning because they are aggressive. They're not winning because they're playing a bunch of slow artifacts and making the Captain an 8/8 and attacking for 8 on turn 12. Like that's not what you want to be doing at the artifact decks in this format. I mean, you could, but usually not.
Well, Carl, let's wrap this thing up in
closing arguments.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for hanging with us, listeners. We know we have been a bit more sporadic lately. Life has come up. This has not been our favorite format. When we bring you content, we want to be all in 100% and give you the best we have to offer. And the conditions the last couple weeks were just certainly such that we were not going to be able to do that. And so we didn't. Now we're back and we're doing it and we're happy to be here and we appreciate you sticking with us.
Yeah, totally, Carl. Mostly it was the life stuff for me, but also this format just is not terribly interesting for me, so we just need to work harder for a more interesting topic. Although we have an out, Carl, there is Cons of Tarkir coming to Arena in a couple weeks, so I think we could probably manage some more exciting episodes. I had a lot of fun with this one. I actually this is one of my deep debates. Like sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I could see your point. I don't know, I'm somewhere in the middle. I am so strongly on Captain Storm here. Like you convinced me, you've got great points, but I don't know. It's not even a contest for me.
It's funny. I mean, I am not aggressively on the Chupacabra Echo at this point.
But you're doing it. Yeah.
I'm not, this is not a, take a side that you're not passionate about for content. No, I'm taking the Chupacabra Echo over the Captain. I just don't want to go fight for the blue-red deck right now, and I've figured out a little bit of success with the black deck, so here we are.
You'll have to show me, Carl.
We'll see.
I'll have to see it myself, okay?
I have gotten back to like my long-term average win rate over the last 15 drafts, which has been a massive step up from where I was early on. So I'll see if I can keep it up. It was also fun, honestly, kind of being Garrett for an episode.
It's hard, right? I make it look. I know I make it look effortless and easy, but it's hard being on that side of things, right? The the value side, the attrition side. All you want is like glass cannon side, and you know what? It hurts to be on this side, Carl. But at least if I'm on a glass cannon, at least I have a captain on.
Look, it's a body and it kills a thing. Derp, 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 derp.
Well, that about wraps it up. So thank you so much for listening to Mystical Dispute. Support the show on Patreon. I'm Garrett Gardner. You can find me at twitch.tv/gguards.
And I'm Garrett Gardner. You can find me at twitch.tv/gguards.
Hilarious. Shout out to 17 Lines with the Data. You can support them on Patreon as well. Until next time, draft the good colors and stay chill.
Adios.
We are going to debate Chupacabra Echo versus...
What the fuck's the name?
I was like, I don't know how to... It's Captain Storm Cosmium Raider.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, I wanted to say Captain Lannery Storm and,